Good morning, everybody. My name is Deirdre Moynihan. I'm the head of Programs Music Network, and you're very welcome to the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Musicians in Residence 2022 information session. I'm going to be joined by Ciara King and Carolyn Brown in a little while from the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Arts Office. But first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the residency programme. Before we begin, just to mention to you that you'll notice that your cameras and microphones are on mute at the moment, but don't worry, you'll be able to ask any questions you like by typing the questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen there. And Carolyn, Ciara and I will come to all those questions at the end of the session. So if you think of any as we're going along, type them in there and we'll see them all at the end. Just make sure into the Q&A box and not the comment box. Also, just to say that this webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded tomorrow on our social media channels. So you'll be able to catch it again there if you feel you've missed anything, or you might like to recommend it to someone who wasn't able to make this particular time today for the live session. And then finally, just to say that a lot of the information we're sharing today and talking about, it's included in the guidelines for the scheme. So you may have already downloaded those guidelines from the website details you see there at the bottom of your screen. But if not, my colleague Ciara is just going to upload a link to those guidelines in the chat now. And if you haven't already done so, you can download them there. Just might be useful for kind of following along. And if you want to make any notes or kind of for memory jogging later, so you can download it now from the chat box. So we'll get started. So the scheme is jointly funded by Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council and the Arts Council, and it's managed by Music Network. The scheme essentially provides opportunities to develop new work, and this may be compositional or performance focused. So you might be interested in creating a brand new body of material, be it one piece or a number of pieces, you know, depending on the style of music you're writing. You might be interested in working with someone new, so forming a new collaboration, or you could be an existing group who might want to kind of develop their practice, maybe explore a new body of work or a new way of engaging together. So it's really open in terms of the type of project you can propose for this residency opportunity. So there are 3 residencies again in 2022. 2 of these will be for established individual musicians or groups, and 1 for an emerging individual musician or group. And you'll see there that the available budgets are $5,000 and $3,000 respectively. But there's a lot of in-kind support for both residencies that go with that. And then really important to remember is the closing date for applications. That's Friday, the 11th of March, 2022 at 2 p.m. So you do need to submit your applications prior to that time on that date. So do prepare in advance and get it into us on time. So the residencies, they'll take place broadly over these 3 periods. The first, May to mid-June, the second within June and July, and the third, August to mid-September. Now there's a lot of flexibility within those periods to kind of select the exact dates on which you want to kind of carry out the activities of the residency, but they're the broad periods, and you'll be asked to select your preference or select them in order of preference as part of your application. As mentioned, you can apply for an established or emerging residency opportunity. It's also open to musicians working in all genres, so very open in that respect. Now, some kind of key things to note which relate to eligibility. So if you're an emerging artist, you and all members of your group, you must be originally from, live, work, or have studied a relevant discipline in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown. So that's essential that that is the case in order to be eligible for this opportunity. For the established artists, you can, for the established artists, you can either demonstrate this same strong connection to Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown, or you can propose a project that has a key connection with the area. It might be inspired by the location, engage with musicians in the community, you know, a variety of ways in which you can outline that connection. So there are 2 really key things to keep in mind. And then the final thing is just in relation to people who have been previously awarded one of these residency opportunities, that you must wait a period of 5 years in order to be eligible to apply for the scheme again. So as mentioned, the primary aim is to provide opportunities for musicians to create and develop new work and new collaborations. So additional objectives would also be to provide opportunities to showcase the work, to develop musician skills in relation to collaboration and presenting both in person, and online. It's also an opportunity to support the career development through advice and mentorship, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The residency also provides the public, the general public, with an opportunity to gain insight into your creative process as the resident artist. And also it, I suppose, enables access to high quality music performances, so the public can engage with your work. And then finally, a really important objective is to ensure that artists are fairly remunerated for their work. And when you're planning your project and thinking about all of the ideas for your residency, do keep this in mind in terms of the scale and, you know, what's realistic within the available budgets, and, you know, what's realistic to enable everyone to be, I suppose, fairly remunerated for their contribution to the project. So just a couple of quick things about the residency scheme. So as mentioned, it involves development work leading to performance showcases. They'll be part-time in format, so taking place over non-consecutive days. So within those 3 residency periods, you know, there is flexibility, for example, for you to break up those days in whatever way you'd like. You might prefer to do 2 a week, or maybe a block of 4 days and then take a break and another 2 days. Of course, it'll also depend on availability of the studio, but, you know, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the format and what you feel would best suit your approach to developing your practice. Where possible, the activities will take place in person, in the studio, space, and I suppose depending on COVID-19 restrictions and of course the availability of the space, there will, you know, be some flexibility required in terms of scheduling these dates. But, you know, in theory and ideally, activities would take place in the DLR Lexicon studio. So here are just 2 images of the studio. As you can see, it's a nice kind of performance space there. This ensemble are using tech, you know, a PA for their performance. You will need to bring in a sound engineer to operate any PA if you choose to use amplification for your performance. That said, acoustic performances also work really well in the space. You can see there's acoustic wooden paneling down the side. It's a nice acoustic for a performance that isn't using amplification. So really the choice is yours in terms of what you feel would best suit the work you're developing. And you can see as well in this image, this duo used projections. They incorporated projections in their performance, and there is a projector and a screen at the back of the stage in situ. So that's very easy to accommodate that if that's something you'd like to do to enhance your performance. So then just going through the details of each residency. They're quite similar, but there are a couple of differences. So the residency for established musicians and groups, this includes 10 development days. As mentioned, you know, they could potentially take place in the DLR Lexicon studio. Now, there might be an issue with availability from time to time, and it might be in a different space within the library, but also there might be reasons you might carry out development days in another location if you're doing field work or something like that. So that would all be discussed and agreed with the Arts Office, you know, if you were appointed as one of the resident artists. Then the 4 digital updates on social media, what that refers to really is an opportunity to share your creative process with the general public, to give people an insight into the way you develop your work. So these will be uploaded at 4 stages during your residency. And you could go onto our social media channels and have a look at how other artists have done that previously. You'll see there's a real variety of ways in which people share their work process, and it would very much be led by what you feel will best represent your work. So, you know, what you feel, how you feel like do that will be certainly up to yourselves, and we'll discuss that with you. At the end of each residency period, there'll be an informal public performance in the Lexicon Library. That may be in the studio, but it might be in another part of the library. And also there will be one public concert presented on Culture Night. Ideally on Culture Night, that may be TBC, but the intention would be that all 3 resident artists would perform on September 23rd on Culture Night. Throughout the residency, Music Network will be very happy to offer advice and support as needed, of course, so do get in touch with us at any stage. And then this next point, mentoring sessions, beneficial for professional development with external experts. So you might decide there's a particular practice or part of your practice that you'd like to develop and you'd like to work with a particular expert in that area. So that's certainly something that you can incorporate into your residency program. Just remember to include any relevant fees or related expenses to that mentoring opportunity as part of your residency budget. But it can certainly be a great way to develop your work and to develop your practice. And finally, at the end of the residency, you'll be asked to complete a very short, simple project report. And that really is an opportunity for you to feed back to us, to tell us, how you found the residency. If there's anything you'd like to share with us, we welcome all feedback and certainly take it all into consideration for the subsequent years. So that's very much appreciated to fill in that report. And just to mention that the budget of 5,000, that is inclusive of that. So you'll see the emerging musicians and groups, that the residency, it's quite similar, but the key differences are that there are 6 development days rather than 10 development days for the emerging musicians. And the other difference to note is that there is an addition of a mentoring session with Music Network's communication manager relating to PR and social media. So that can be really beneficial to have a one-to-one session with Music Network's communications manager to, I suppose, find out more. There might be particular areas of social media that you'd like to explore and discuss and be advised on. So that's an additional element to the emerging residency. And of course, the available budget is, as mentioned before, 3,000, which is also inclusive of that. So some additional information. So the residency budget, we mentioned it must include, for example, items like the cost of a mentor being involved, but it must also include costs such as technical equipment, a sound engineer, if you are bringing a sound engineer into the Lexicon studio, collaborating musicians' fees, if you're working with a videographer, all of the costs must be included in your budget. Relating to the informal performance, if you are using amplification, there will be some tech equipment available, but you would need to engage a professional sound engineer to operate that equipment, and those costs covered in the residency budget. However, for the Culture Night performance, the Arts Office will make a small additional budget available to look after the provision of live sound for those performances. And as I mentioned, the Lexicon Studio has no in-house tech staff. You can download the Studio Technical Information Guide, which will give you a lot of information and images about the studio space, about what tech equipment is in there. The lighting is, you won't have access to the lighting rig, but there will be a number of presets that you can set. But all of that information is in the Studio Technical Information Guide. And again, my colleague Kieran has uploaded a link to that guide to the chat box. So if you'd like to download that guide, you can do so now as well. And finally, just to mention that all activities taking place in the library space, including the studio, you will need to have public liability insurance. And I'm sure Carolyn and Ciara will be able to talk a little bit more about that at the end if you have any questions. And also employers' liability insurance would be relevant if you are engaging others to work with you, and everyone obviously needs to be insured, but you decide to insure them under your employer's liability. So they're all things we can get into the technicalities of later. I'm very happy for you to call us about those, if you have specific questions, but just to kind of flag that those things are required and need to be included in the residency budget. So now we come on to the selection criteria. So there are 4 criteria. Artistic quality and track record is very important. It's 45% of the assessment. And if you're an emerging artist, demonstrated potential will also be assessed. So there's lots of ways in which you can demonstrate your track record or your potential, be it through audio files or video files, but also, performances you've carried out in the past, who you've collaborated with. All of those things are really relevant, and they will be in your CV for the panel to look at and take into consideration. Next, the quality and coherence of your proposal. So that's your artistic plan, what you hope to achieve, how you hope to do it, who you're going to collaborate with if it's not a solo project, what you envisage the performance at the end to be like, how you're going to share your digital updates, how you're going to share and offer insight into your practice and your development of your work throughout the residency. So all of that would come under the quality and coherence of your proposal. The feasibility of the proposal, again, including the approach to facilitating collaboration and development work. We mentioned earlier the demonstration of fair remuneration of artists, really important to reflect that in your project budget. And so again, I would say, look at the scale of your project, what's feasible, what's realistic, what will mean that you can fairly remunerate everyone involved. So just think of all of those aspects when you're kind of putting together the artistic side of it as well, because the logistics are important as well. And finally, a demonstrated ability in project and budget planning and management. Previous projects you've been involved in, outline what your role was in them, just to demonstrate your abilities in these areas. And I would say, take all four of these criteria into account when planning your application, because it's a very competitive process. There are 3 residencies with lots more applications, and it very often comes down to small margins at the end. So to kind of meet all the selection criteria as best you can and to the highest level you can is really the way to go in terms of giving your proposal the best chance of achieving a residency opportunity. So then we're looking briefly at the application process and assessment procedure. So the application process, as I mentioned earlier, you can visit either website to download the guidelines. In the guidelines, there will be a link which you click on to bring you to where you can start your online application process. So you can set up a profile on the application portal. It's very straightforward. Once you've set up your profile, you then can complete the relevant application in stages. So you don't have to do it all at once. You can set up your profile, log in, have a look at the application form, see what's required, come back and upload things as you have them prepared. Only at the end, will you need to submit. So that's a kind of a useful way that you don't have to do it all in one go if you don't want to. Really important that once you click submit, you will receive a confirmation email if your application has been submitted successfully. So do check that you receive that email. Check your spam folder in case it's mistakenly being misdirected. If you don't receive that email, do get in touch with us at operations@musicnetwork.ie, because it might mean there might have been a technical glitch on your end, or the general system would mean that your application may not be successfully submitted. So that's key, that you need to receive that confirmation email. And if you don't, do get in touch with us to let us know. Then finally, just to mention that hard copy or email applications aren't acceptable. You have to submit through the application form. And also, of course, as I mentioned, you need to be in before that deadline, 2 p.m. Friday, the 11th of March. Now this page here, it relates to a key page on the guidelines, which is page 5 of the guidelines. And these are the essential materials that you must submit in order for your application to be eligible. So you must submit an outline of your proposed program of work. That's the artistic plan and the collaborators, your ideas, how you're going to share your digital updates, all of that which we spoke about earlier. You'll also be asked to upload a short statement outlining the relevant connections to Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown. Again, we mentioned that earlier, 2 different requirements for the 2 different types of residency, but you must be able to outline those connections in a short paragraph, which you will upload on the application platform. You'll be uploading a CV for yourself, a maximum of 2 pages, and 1-page biographies of any proposed collaborators or mentors. We then come to, I suppose, samples of your work, which is you know, that's the opportunity for you to showcase what you do in terms of audio or video recordings. So you will be able to upload up to 3 sample audio recordings, and the file types are listed on the application form, so you know what types of files are accepted. Alternatively, you could upload a Word doc with links to audio and video recordings online. You know, if you prefer not to upload the files themselves, you can certainly upload the information with links in a Word doc. In addition to that, you're asked to include a Word doc outlining some information about each of the 3 samples that you're either uploading or linking to. So, you know, the title of the piece, who's playing on it, who the collaborators are. A really important thing is if it's a long file, you know, if it's a 20-minute file and the bit you really want the panel to hear might be 12 minutes in, put that, you know, as a note beside that, that piece on the Word doc. Just say, please listen from, you know, 12 minutes and 30 seconds, and the panel will go straight to there, because you want to, you know, direct them the best representation of what you want to share with them. And just to say as well, look, the recordings, they don't need to be, you know, professional, but they do need to be of reasonable quality, which will make it possible for the panel to hear and see your work. So just keep all of that in mind and make sure it's the best representation of what you do. The 1-minute video clip then, which briefly outlines your goals and what you hope to achieve, very straightforward. It's just talking about what you want to do and why. Simple recording made on your mobile phone. It's not meant to be anything more complicated than that. It's just an opportunity to articulate and sum up in your own words what you want to do and why and how you hope to do it. We mentioned a detailed budget for your program. You need to include all costs in that budget and upload that budget. And then finally, confirmation of the residency periods you're available for. You may be available for all 3. If so, list your order, your preference in terms of which one, for second, third, or you may be available for 1 or 2. That's fine. If you're not available for all 3, just to make that information clear in your application. Additional support materials, if there's other things you feel you'd like to share, there's an opportunity to upload those within the application form as well. And just to mention, Garda vetting and insurance. So this is for successful candidates. You will be required to undergo Garda vetting if you're working with or engaging with people who are under 18 or vulnerable persons. And you'll need to provide also proof that appropriate insurance arrangements are in place. That was what I referred to earlier, the public liability and the employer's liability as they are relevant to your project. Finally, just to mention, there are 2 appendices there, Appendix 1 and 2, which contain additional information regarding payments to successful applicants, GDPR related information and background information about the DLR lexicon library. So do read through that at your leisure. I'm not going to go through that here today, but there's some very interesting and valuable information in there as well. In order to assess the applications, so there will be a panel and they'll consider all applications received. Successful and unsuccessful applicants, they will receive notification in late March 22. So again, do check your email, check the spam folder in case anything is mistakenly misdirected. And if you haven't heard by the end of March, do get in touch with us at that earlier email that came up, operations@musicnetwork.ie. You can request feedback afterwards for a period of up to 4 weeks, and this can be really beneficial for the preparation of future applications. You know, there can be some very helpful feedback from the panel if you would like to request that from us. Also, just to mention that the Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council reserves the right not to appoint and to pursue a different selection process if none of the applications received are deemed suitable, and also the right to amend the number of residencies and or the scheduling of residencies in response to the submissions received. Finally, tips for applicants. These, I'm sure, are very obvious, but it's no harm to reiterate them. You know, read the guidelines carefully, be really clear. As I mentioned, page 5 is very important because it outlines all the essential in order to be eligible for consideration. A really important one is don't assume assessors are familiar with your work. You may be a very well-known artist, but some member of the panel just may not be familiar with your work. So really treat it as if people are totally unfamiliar with your work and approach your application in that way, so that you put in everything and don't assume that everything that's relevant, and don't assume that people know more about you. Just, you know, it's a good way to kind of look at it. Ensure, as we said, the recordings offer the best representation of your work. Make sure they're clear as well, and that, you know, you can be clearly heard if that's what you're trying to showcase in a particular recording. I suppose the key thing, again, submit in advance of the deadline, which we've now mentioned several times. And I think we've come to the end of just going through the details. So now it's an opportunity for anyone who would like to ask questions. I'm going to invite Ciara and Carolyn to join us now. Just to mention as well, if you'd like to ask any questions afterwards, you can get in touch with us anytime at operations@musicnetwork.ie, and also on that phone number below there, 01475 0224. So I'm going to stop sharing and just enable gallery view here. Hi, Ciara. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
Hi, Deirdre. Hi, everyone.
Now, we've stopped sharing there. So I'm just going to see if we have any questions. So we don't actually have any questions in the Q&A. If anyone would like to ask any questions, do feel free to do so now. I mean, in the meantime, Ciara and Carolyn, if there's anything you wanted to kind of add to that while we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions.
I mean, I think you've really covered everything, so that's probably why no one has any questions. You've done a great job going through all three.
Caroline, your sound.
Sorry, I think we've lost Carolyn's sound. So I think, yeah, no, as Carolyn says, you've covered everything. I think I suppose the only thing just from our point of view to say as well is you can see it from the images as well. There's definitely scope within the studio to include previous musicians in residence have included video. There's the space the space seats maximum 120 people. The studio at Lexicon, and the seating, we have had occasions where the seats have been retracted, and maybe that performances have been done in the round. So there is a lot of scope there as well, and that's just worth mentioning too.
Absolutely, yeah. And as we were saying, you can have a visual representation in that tech guide. It's not just the technical information, isn't it, Ciara? Yeah. Isn't there images of the, as you were talking about there, the retraction of the seats and stuff? Yeah. So it's so flexible, the space, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, take a bit of time to look through the tech spec that's there, because it'll give you a good idea of what might be possible with the space.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was just going to add, sorry, my sound went there for a minute, but is just take a bit of time to look at what previous musicians and residents have done, because that can actually be really interesting. So quite a few of their concerts and things are up on our website, so do take time to have a look at them, because it might kind of give you some inspiration, or even kind of just ideas for what is possible within the space.
Absolutely, yeah, and they'd be available on both social media channels, I think, wouldn't they, Carolyn? Yeah. So yeah, it just shows the huge variety, as we said at the start, all genres. It's open to all genres, and we've certainly had that, I think, over the years. Really eclectic mix and exciting mix of showcasing what fabulous work is being done out there. So yeah, it'll be really exciting to receive all those ideas again this year. We're looking forward to working with the 3 resident artists, definitely.
And like you say, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to get in touch. But there's a huge amount of information in the briefing document as well, and then the studio tech spec, which gives all that information as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, will we sign off if people don't have any other questions? And as you said, Ciara, people can follow up with us directly afterwards. You have the email contact and the phone number there, and
great.
There's a lot in those documents.
Yeah. Best of luck to everyone.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Applications.
Absolutely. Thanks a million, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Very much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.